G'day, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Now, listen, normally I am pretty placid when it comes to interviewing guests, but today I'm taking the gloves off a little bit because we've got a hot topic that we are fielding a lot of inquiries from, and probably I'd say since the start of the year. So I brought in Damien Walker, gun broker, Nate Condi, another weapon as a broker, very much guiding our clients on loan strategies. That's what we do here for our clients at Atelier Wealth. We are very much loan strategists that try to unpack ways to grow and scale portfolios. The topic today, guys, that we're discussing is buying through a trust. How many questions do you reckon you get a week, or percentage of client calls for investors, Damien, you reckon you're getting on trusts at the moment?
For investors with more than 2 properties, I'd say everybody is mentioning it to me. Yeah, it's in the zeitgeist. Everyone's talking about it. Protecting your borrowing power, it becomes such a big concern for a lot of our investors, because without borrowing, well, you can't really buy property, especially at the start of your acquisition phase. So, yeah, I would say nearly every astute investor is bringing it up to me.
Yeah. I mean, do a quick YouTube search on buying through a trust, and you'd say it's like it ranks right up there from an SEO perspective, which is why you see a lot of the buyer's agents, a lot of the property strategists are really talking about buying through a trust. Now, this is one strategy of many when it comes to buying and scaling an investment property portfolio. But we're going to double down on this. So what we want to do is talk about how it works, pros and cons, and then some recent examples that we've seen. So for the uninitiated, for people that are starting out, Damien, trust in a nutshell, what do you kind of see?
So what we're seeing with the trust strategy is, well, the main reason that people are doing it is to protect your borrowing power. Yeah. And the way that it works when you buy within a trust, the trust is getting the loan and also holding the asset. And once that trust can trade profitably, meaning the rental income from that trust can cover the loan repayments and all the running costs of buying that property, you can essentially sequester it off your personal portfolio.
So I guess the word that they're using is it ring fences that debt. Right. So you hear that comment come up. So that debt gets ring fenced, and the superpower that it has is now that debt doesn't sit on your liabilities.
Correct.
Column anymore, right?
Yeah. So that's in a nutshell what people are. A lot of the investors are. Now, there's other strategies that you would use a trust, that you would buy within a trust. Asset protection,
big one,
is a massive one. But generally speaking, when people are talking about trusts to me, it's about protecting future borrowing power.
Which, as soon as they come to us, and as soon as you're speaking to your mortgage broker, perhaps it's like wave a magic wand and increase my borrowing capacity because I want to buy through a trust. And I feel like we are sometimes the bearers of bad news, going, yes, but we can get a marginal uplift in borrowing capacity. And these are some of the buts that we want to answer, because we're close to the action. A lot of listeners or a lot of new clients generally aren't, and I don't expect them to, because this is our zone of genius. But what happens here is, and the big one, particularly in a higher rate environment and a slow rental growth environment, is now we're negatively geared, and we can't apply negative gearing when buying through a trust.
Correct. And yes, so one of the cons, I guess, if you want to talk about one of the cons or downsides of buying within a trust, is that the loss while you initially hold that property, and most of our investors are purchasing properties with somewhere between a 70% to 100% LVR. So mostly that first couple of years is running at a loss while you are hemorrhaging cash, while the property is trading at a loss. When you buy within the trust, you cannot pass that loss onto your income, i.e. getting negative gearing benefits. The loss is held within the trust, held within the corporate trustee. So in the future, you will get the benefit of passing on that loss within earnings of the trust, but the future is anything, right? And a lot of the time, our investors who have got 3, 4, 5, 6 properties are looking for that relief come tax time, whether it's through a strategy like a PAYG withholding strategy, or just getting that tax back at the end of every financial year to really help with those holding costs during that negative period. So that is a big downside. So when people come to me and they say, I want to buy within a trust, great. But what property are you going to put within that trust?
Yeah.
Because classic example, one of our experienced investors bought a property in a trust to protect borrowing at a low rate environment. And this is probably where this investor didn't have the foresight, or a lot of people didn't, but it was a low rate environment. So initially it wasn't too negative.
Yeah.
But we had that 4% swing in rates, and then that property was losing somewhere in the vicinity of $40,000 a year. He himself was a fairly higher income earner, and he could not pass any loss to that income.
Yeah.
So he was hemorrhaging $40,000 a year. At the tax rate he was earning, he would have got 45 cents back from the go, so nearly 20 grand back, and it really hurt. You know,
that hurts in the back pocket. That hurts from borrowing capacities, borrowing capacity as well. Yeah, I guess it always comes back to the frustrated investor, right? So this is probably why trust has become such a popular vehicle, or like I guess the flavor of 2024, which is the frustrated investor is someone that has the equity but can't get it out because their borrowing capacity has been shot to pieces. 13 rate rises will do that. There's only so many banks that will do the 1% refinance buffer as well. So apply a small buffer when you go to refinance, and you can't pull that much equity out with those particular lenders. And then when we show them lenders that they can go to when they're borrowing through their individual names, they're going, well, that rate doesn't look attractive. And so that's why, again, we're trying to go down this path of trust. So now I'm going to throw to yourself, because there's a couple of things that I want to go through, and particularly one is numbers. It's probably hard in a audio medium to convey some numbers, but Nate, you are the numbers man. So
sure thing.
Let's have a look at this. Let's just do some quick calculations. So I'm going to say someone single on $125,000. How much can they borrow?
Owner-occupied purchase or investment purchase?
Let's go investment. Right. And we'll go investment on what are we assuming, like a 5% rental yield at the moment? You've got to bear in mind, there are some banks that will take extra expenses attached to having this investment property. We're going to leave those out for the time being, or take those as a minimal. And again, this is where we say not all banks are created equally, because you got to look at some banks will factor in outgoings such as property management, and if we don't particularly buy a lot of strata type properties here, but strata or council and extra bills as well. What have you got?
Sure thing. So yeah, using income of $125K a year, rental income of $500 a week, and this person is living with parents still.
Yep.
So you can borrow in that instance around $900,000.
That's pretty good.
That is good.
It's pretty good. So then the question is like, you got $900K in borrowing. Do we split that and go and buy two properties, for example? And then it becomes diminishing returns at that point, because you're borrowing $900, you're splitting it out, but then it's across two investment properties that have two expenses, for example, and you're probably prone to different lenders.
And you've got another source of rental income there as well. You've got a second source, so that'll actually increase it further too. Yeah.
So that becomes, so if you're listening and you fit that basket, you're probably on close to a six-figure income, living at home with parents, for example, and you've got a decent little cash buffer there, you're probably looking at some decent borrowing capacity.
Definitely.
The numbers change though when you add in an owner-occupied debt significantly, right? And let's assume that someone's got a $600,000 mortgage, which is very low for our Sydney our East Coast listeners as well. West Coast, what is it? What are we on?
We're on the East Coast. I'd say $600,000 is quite low for Sydney. Yeah. It's maybe average for Melbourne and Brisbane. It's getting there for WA at the moment, actually, in Perth. Yeah. It is a pretty average amount. Let's go 600,000.
Let's say it's like an average one.
Yeah, so at that point, with a $600K owner-occupied debt, still the rental income of $500 a week, you're looking at borrowing capacity of around, with major lenders, 270 odd, with some non-banks around 350.
Yeah, right.
So you see a massive drop, which makes sense. You see the 600K comes down by about that amount.
Yeah.
I
just want to give those a bit of a frame of reference. Now let's take that up to a couple, for example. Okay. Let's go we're a double income, no kids couple, so dinks. We're on 100K each, for example, and they're going to go down the path of rent investing. So what we're going to do is 100K incomes each. They've got a good deposit. They don't know where to call home yet. So what they're going to do is go on this path of reinvesting.
So let's put in there, I think about $700 rental expense. What do you think per week?
That's about right.
I think that's about right.
No problem. So yeah, with those parameters, still the 500 week rental income per week, you're looking at $1 to $1.1 million.
Right.
So from majors to non-majors in that range. Yeah.
So still renting, good size deposit, but has the ability to get into the market and probably acquire a couple of investment properties.
Definitely.
And then the question is, how have we done that? So step one is we generally go down the path of maybe using a guarantor loan, which is kind of crack that door open. So no cash down. The second investment property is then we're putting some money down as well. So we've gone from 0 to 2 pretty quickly for a young couple. And I feel like we've been able to accelerate that journey pretty quickly, right, Nate?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then what are the benefits then of rent vesting, Aaron? So you can potentially buy into different types of markets that might be performing better than others, for example. So you could take the $1 million and split it into an owner-occupied property wherever they live, or potentially take that $1 million and diversify it across different markets. Is that sort of where people are thinking? So what
we're looking is there's 2 assets now that have an ability to grow in value. Generally, we're saying a conversation with our younger clients is we don't know where you want to call home yet. That's one. So there's no point buying where you don't want to live just yet. So you got that ability to rent and be flexible with your lifestyle. The other part is these properties are growing at a faster ability than your chance to save as well. So that kind of ratchets it up, their savings ability. And then these 2 or 3 properties might then be sold off when you want to buy the family home. So rent vesting will get you to a point that it may actually get you your family home that you would have had to have toiled and saved and maybe borrowed money from family to get into a market, especially in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, where entry price points are sitting somewhere like over 1.2 for a decent-ish family home, if not probably a bit more than that.
And one that I get from a lot of clients, and I would like to get your opinion, Aaron, like you rent vest, but you give up your first home buyer benefits. Should that be such a thing that you really hold weight to, like getting some benefits from the government, or do you think you're missing out on opportunities a lot sooner?
You're missing nothing. You're missing nothing, and I reckon first time owner grants between us, we've probably done, I'd say 5 in the last year, maybe 10 if we're lucky. Then you're shaking your head, mate.
Well, not the grants, not the $10,000 grants, and stamp duty discount when they come. Yeah, but in most states these days, the prices of property are just going up at, between 3 to 10% a year. Yeah. Those thresholds for the stamp duty discounts, they get upgraded like every 12 to 24 months. And they get upgraded in such a meaningless way, in my opinion, that it misses such a market of like first-time buyers who maybe don't want to buy a 2-bedroom unit or 1-bedroom unit for their first property. They want to buy that family home. They do not get any benefit.
Yeah, people are holding off buying investment because they want to click the ticket for a first-time owner's grant. I absolutely do not wait to click the ticket on the first-time buyer benefits. You're buying nothing that's of substance of quality, particularly in Sydney. You're buying an entry-level unit that you are going to outgrow. It's definitely a stepping stone. So if it means that you want the security to stop renting and own your own home, and that's the reason to do it, by all means go all in and do that. But at some point know that you're going to sell that property to upgrade, and the chance that you're probably not going to keep that as an investment because it's not investment grade. And we speak about that a lot. I've tried in the past to hold on to units, turn those into investment properties. They just don't grow. You can't do much to it. You can't add value to it.
The supply can get built around you, unlike lands, that's restrictive, of course.
Yeah. And you're generally selling, who are you selling to? Another first-time buyer. Yeah. So you got to think who's going to come along and buy that. Probably would have been done. 1 bedders in Marrickville, 2 bedders out towards Auburn, for example. They're generally what we've done for first-time buyer grants. If it's regional, then it's been a townhouse or a freestanding house further out, from Sydney we go as well. So unless it's that case where you're more regional, rural, awesome, get into it. If you're metro, I'd say probably not. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I would really agree. I really do, and we see it a lot. I mean, I think for younger people, with the market becoming harder to get into, we need to be more creative to get into the market, and I think the thing that younger people are, I guess we're still stuck in that, you buy your home, you live in it. Like that, your first property, you live in that property, your parents pass on that ideal to you. But I feel like as a younger generation, we can really pivot and say, between the age of 25 to 35, if you can pick up 1 or 2 investment properties, let's just stay low scale, 1 to 2 investment properties, you're in the market for one. It's probably growing. You get to pick a good market. So you're the buyer's agent and pick a place that's really booming. And then also think about the flexibility it gives you to live closer to your work, to work harder, to become a master of your trade, and to build that income up. Because when you go and get that big mortgage for that big house, you need a big income.
Absolutely.
Or just a higher than average income these days. Yeah. So having that flexibility and I guess getting into the market in some way, shape or form, but allowing you to also be a master of your trade and build that income base. So when you do want to buy that owner-occupied property for the family, which we both have owner-occupied properties, the stability it gives you, especially when you've got kids, of course, it's the goal. Everyone's aiming for it. It's just a bit of a longer pathway to get there. There's no shortcutting anymore.
Yeah, you can't. The way to shortcut is to buy investment properties and then cash them in, because again, people then have this idea they're going to strip the equity. But where's the deposit going to come to buy your own home? So again, if you're funding your own home through an equity release in an investment property, you've now got a mortgage that's relatively a high loan to value ratio.
Correct. Yep.
So again, we want to try and keep people holding investment properties for as long as possible, but it may come at a point, it's like buying through a trust. The first question we're asking is, what are you doing? So this kind of circles all the way back to the very start, which is, we're talking about a loan strategy here. Take me through your property strategy. How does a loan strategy align to that as well? And that's why we generally I think we're hitting out the park at the moment with like so much work that we've got on, because we're marrying the two up. We're not just here to fix a loan and go, thank you very much. The property strategy is aligning to the loan strategy. We're then in sync with a buyer's agent going, what are we buying? Where are we buying? What's the purpose for? And then it's what's the vehicle? Is it a company? Is it individual name? Is it a trust structure? Is it a self-managed super fund?
And let's go into one of those, one of the other features of a trust that I don't think people are too aware of, and that's the land tax.
Yeah.
So in certain states, there's a threshold, is that correct, Aaron, where you pay land tax after you reach a certain value of investment assets. Yep. So
I'm not here giving tax advice.
Of course not.
Do speak to a professional, but we're going to talk about what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly right. Yes, this is not tax advice, but there is that component of land tax being payable in certain states from the first asset you hold when it's within a trust. I think New South Wales is the one.
They do vary state by state, some based on the value, some based on the threshold or number of properties. So again, this forms part of this discussion as to why you're buying through a trust. Do you know what those obligations are going to be as well? And I think the big allure of buying through a trust has been that ability to give you, like, wave a magic wand and increase your borrowing capacity. What we're saying is, well, it can do part of that, but it's not a silver bullet when it comes to like having this unlimited borrowing capacity.
If I've maxed out my borrowing in my personal name, can I buy a property in a trust?
Well, where's the equity going to come to buy that first property? So we need to release some equity in order to then go and buy this property through a trust, unless you're putting some cash down. That's part one. And then part two is, okay, the lenders that do offer trusts, you'll be able to qualify with them. The next part then is, well, don't balk at the rate when we show you the rate, because this is effectively the lenders that will offer you. That's another part to it. And then what happens is, how do we strip out the equity from properties that you held previously in your individual name while this property is not meeting, while it's not neutrally geared or positively geared in trust, that debt, unless your accountant's willing to sign a letter say that trust is meeting its obligations, that debt is going to sit on your personal balance sheet when we're going to a bank. So pulling the crystal ball out and saying, look, I want to go and pull the trigger on these investment properties, let me be very clear, we are pro that type of approach. In fact, we're probably more bullish than our own clients sometimes to go, here's how you can scale a portfolio. I think sometimes we've done strategies like, here's how you can go buy 4 or 5 investment properties off the bat, and
they run away.
They get scared, and I'm like, guys, this is what you came to us for. We're executing on this plan. Now, the how is, do we buy these individual names or through a trust or self-managed super fund? Then we get into the nuts and bolts of the how. Most people come to us going, I want to buy through a trust. And then we have to reverse fit the engineer, which means reverse engineer the strategy. And I think I said it before, it's like fitting a square peg into a round hole, right? what's the property, where are we buying, what price point, what yield are we looking for, what are the ongoing costs and maintenance? Is this property the one that's going to leverage and scale your portfolio upwards? Okay, awesome. And now let's talk about the how and the tool.
And personally, when I'm doing strategies for clients, having that conversation from day one about how many they want to get to, like if someone says, I want to get to 4 or 5 investment properties, then we can go back in and reverse engineer how to get there. Yeah. There'll be some opportunities where you buy within a trust and we let the asset decide the ownership. Like a good yielding asset in a state with no land tax that's going to be positively geared within 12, 24 months, that's going to be a great asset for a trust. Yep. So you can then let the property decide who buys the property, whether it's yourself or the trust.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a better way of approaching it. Not just coming into it with, I've got to protect my borrowing power.
Yeah.
I need to get this in a trust, otherwise I'm going to be maxed out. That is really reactively looking at your portfolio instead of being proactive about planning from day one. So any like new investors out there, have a goal in mind, speak to your broker, be very upfront. Some people are very, and I'm one of them, you're the opposite, I think, Aaron, but we don't, and probably Nate, you're like me, you don't want to say your dreams out loud. You know what I mean? I know, Aaron, you'll scream it out to the rooftop because you're motivating in that way. But some people are more conservative. We all want to get there, but we're just a little bit too shy, or can I really do it?
Yeah.
I'd say with things like this, scream it out loud.
Yeah. And here's what happens. So many people come to us because their last broker, they outgrew or they didn't believe in them. Like, oh, my broker's really conservative. I'm like, then you got to find the right team, man. Like, if you're aiming for the stars and someone's not happy to play that game, then that's cool. Like, you're running a different race. So yeah, to your point, that team will then determine the level of your success. I will say that time and time again. The team that you have around you will determine the level of success that you have. And when you surround yourself with people that are willing to push the envelope, yep, you call it creative lending or whatever. Yeah, however you want to play in grey areas. Maybe we've got a credit license. We absolutely will be compliant. But I will show you various ways to get there. One of the ways could be a lender with a higher interest rate. And that's something I want to have a chat as well about, which is at the moment, when it comes to, and Nate, you're probably doing a lot of my loan strategies for me as well, we're having to pick out lenders that have a higher rate, right? Or maybe they've got a higher fee, but it's like, hey, look, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to pull out the equity that you've got, and then we're trying to go and scale a portfolio. So you add those two together. Off the back of that, it's maybe a lender. Yeah, it's a non-bank lender or someone's got a higher interest rate, right? And they go, oh, I don't know about this rate that's high. I'm like, the analogy that I use with my team here is when you're going on a holiday, you're not basing a decision on the airline ticket. Now, the airline tickets, yeah, you will factor that as part of your cost to go on a certain holiday. I mean, mate, you're off to Fiji very soon.
Yeah.
Fiji was the destination. We picked it, your family, for example, going to celebrate your family's, your dad's birthday party, and we're going to Fiji. Now what you do is you then optimize the flights. Okay, we're looking for a direct flight this time to this time, for example, we're returning these dates. Yeah? Can be flexible with dates if we need to. It's the same thing with an interest rate. The property is the destination. The property is the place that you're trying to get to. The loan is the airline ticket. It's the vehicle to get there. That airline, you could chop and change that tomorrow if you needed to, if you weren't locked in, right? Versus you're locked into Fiji. And if I explain, so hopefully it's not a vague example, but it's one that I try to explain to clients is stop trying to buy the property on the loan. You've missed the point here. The loan is simply the vehicle to buy the investment property. The investment property you cannot change. You bought it, you're locked in. The loan, that can be chopped and changed at any given point. So you're simply dating the rate, and Tom Panel says it best. You marry the home and you date the rate. And I think that says it so well. And we try to explain that to clients. It's like, how many different examples can I give you that you'd understand that it's simply a vehicle to get capital growth and cash flow? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the boys at APS say this a lot. As you're saying, if the non-bank lender allows you to get into a higher quality property, do it. If you're paying an extra $1,500 a year in repayments, but that higher quality property goes up by 5 to 10 grand, you've made money right there.
Totally.
Right? So, yeah, if that's what helps you get into the property, you got to do it.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Like I said, I don't normally kind of tiptoe around some topics. I normally tiptoe around with our guests, but today I just thought, look, bring the guys in that are doing a lot of the numbers and loan strategies as well. And for the listeners that are curious, and I know there's a lot of people that have started reaching out going, hey, look, I'm thinking about scaling my portfolio. I want you to reach out to us. We've got two options here. If you're an existing investor and you want to do a portfolio review, then let's do that. So drop us a DM saying portfolio review, and then we'll organize a time for a chat where we can pop the hood on your portfolio, look at the equity positions, work out your serviceability and borrowing capacity. And that, I think, is the right way that we can then build a portfolio with the right foundations. You obviously got into the market, got a few properties under your belt, and you may be frustrated as an investor going, no, I've got equity. How do I eke out more borrowing capacity? That's one. If you're a newer investor and you want the property strategy or the roadmap, then DM us saying roadmap. And let's get in touch about putting the plans in place like we do for a lot of our new investors going, here's how we get to 1, 2, 3 investment properties pretty quickly. And then what we're doing is working backwards on a time frame. I reckon you've got about 18 months to execute. We're buying one property every 6 months. Think about where you'll be in 1.5 years' time. You keep kicking. If you keep listening and not acting, I'm going to implore you, this could be this chance to act before we close out 2024. Because we're already 3/4 way through this year, only a few months left. It's going to take us 1 or 2 months to get pre-approved, right? Like our turnaround times, the banks, for example, it's going to take us 4 to 6 weeks to get pre-approvals locked in and then find a property and then settle. So 2024 is really kind of at this point now where it's going to close out. And if you had plans, the time to act is now.
If your 2024 resolution was to buy a property, you're running behind. Yeah. You've got to move. We don't have that much time left. You know, everyone clocks off halfway through December.
There we go. So between now, so what would it be like September? So between now, what's that, 3.5 months?
Yes. Yep, 3.5 months.
To act. The year is not over, but fortune favors those. And I say the property market rewards action takers and decision makers. Mm-hmm. So what action are you going to take that your 2025 will be better for you? What decisions will you make that 2025 will be paying dividends and you can buy more property in 2025? Because from what I'm hearing, 2025 could be the year that we start to see rates drop. Could be. We don't speculate on rates here.
I hope so.
I hope so too. And then at that point, you're swimming with the masses. You're then with the masses. Everyone's coming back into the market, borrowing capacity and sentiment's high. This is the time to be acting. Yeah, like I said, this episode could be the little kick up the butt that you need to go, hey, I need someone that's going to help me. We don't ever monetize our audience or our listeners. We don't ever kind of sell you a cause, or we're not in that business. We're here to give information, but I feel right now we are in a position of authority with our clients that someone's got to take the lead. We want to take that lead. Who's on the journey to join us? I'm going to leave it there. I want to say thanks very much for tuning in. Love your feedback as always. Until next time, take care.